record on the cloud, and then I download it. Okay, so language and play, what comes to your mind? I have prepared a little YouTube movie, and you may have seen that before. If you haven't, let me prepare it to share it with you. Okay, it's called Talking Twin Babies.
Oh, yeah.
You've probably seen these two guys.
I use this in classes. It's Danish, two Danish kids.
Yeah, two Danish kids.
It's excellent. Yeah.
They are really excellent. Where are they? Google from here they are. Okay, share. Do you see the sharing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, hold on. I didn't press the sound, so let me do that again. Share screen and get the sound on, and I'll let you watch. It's 2 minutes. They have also a second part.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I would argue for looking at the part 2.
Oh,
Also, yeah, I think we should, because there's something more there's more, the interaction is more. I mean, well, it'd be an interesting comparison, because I feel like in part 2 they use these more conventional ways.
Yes,
like
yes.
yeah.
Screen again with them. Yes, I didn't know which one would be better. I like both.
Yeah.
Okay, let me stop sharing.
Uh,
Yes. They always make me laugh so much
Yeah.
because you almost know what they're talking about. Let me just turn off this because there's something else. Oh my God. What do you think they were talking about?
I don't know.
Did they know what they were talking about?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Did it matter? Like, was it, in some ways, it just felt like the pleasure of doing it with each other and like responding was,
Yes, and such a
Yeah.
long, sustained conversation with all this like showing each other things, looking something, growing something. No,
I like
yeah,
this one. No.
yeah.
I just saw on YouTube that there's a puppet parody of that video, which
Oh,
I don't know if it's related, but considering puppets.
but definitely they're enjoying it greatly. So right, right. In that article that we will fix and send about children's games or play with language. I think there are 3 parts, and I tried to put that online on this agenda thing that I sent you the thing that there is language play in communication. She doesn't call it like that, but it's she talks about the play in everyday interaction. She doesn't say communication, and I like her definition that I here try to translate in my own words, that it's a creative dialogic offer to others, expressing the child's experience of the world, helping the child to understand the implications of their own experience by addressing the others with a wish to make themselves understandable to them, actually. That would be, I think, the most accurate definition. It's not a direct translation, but it's the gist of the translation. So this is not only a communicative function, but a creative function too. And she said, unfortunately, this kind of creativity has been either suppressed by developmental and educational theories and practices, or it has been mystified as some kind of organic children's creativity that the child grows out of, like children are born with this creativity and then later suppressed. She develops that more in the article, but thought that this was not appreciated as a, and not only these 2 babies, that's the beginning. Later on, she explains the beginning of all play with language and talk in general is on this phonetic level, the prosodical level of a melody of the language with no symbolic meaning behind that, or a rudimentary symbolic meaning behind that, because it's a material just like any other kind of music or rhythm, something that you can do something with. And what's important, as we see here, it's in some kind of joint activity with another, that this makes sense. So this is a great movie to illustrate this kind of play, but not play for play's sake, but some kind of like a playful communication, some kind of making fun together with language. And many children do that alone too. Playing with this kind of melodic aspects of and rhythmical aspects of language in situations or out of situations. Some children play very often at night when they are in bed alone. Ruth Ware talked about that a lot. So they may talk to themselves for a while before they fall asleep, or sing to themselves in this kind of like experimenting with the melodical and musical aspect of language prosodical aspect of language, which is interesting because you cannot really completely separate it from kind of language, but it's not yet language in our sense. But we do definitely have this aspect of our language. What do you think?
Well, but that was one of the things I was going to bring up, is that here, it's especially with this video, I feel like we're talking about language very broadly defined, not just about what comes out of our mouth, but how they were using their whole bodies, and maybe sort of like if we could call it a dance, like there's a language of dance too. And I feel like this call and response with their bodies simultaneous to the sounds that they were making and how they were playing with the rhythm of it and the prosody. There's a kind of prosody and rhythm to how we move our bodies too. So that's what I thought was.
You were doing that. And it's a whole immersion in this kind of like a prosodic aspect of we become that dancing that's meaningful in some incredible, interesting way. When she talked about this mysterious aspect of mystifying that, a lot of people think it's a ritual, like children see the ritual aspect of language, that there are some codified things and that they are doing that without knowing what it means. It's just like, it's what you do.
But like in the same way that maybe children take pleasure from being in a role or something. I don't know, like, would that be the same or similar? That they're sort of hanging or anchoring into these kinds of patterns that they see? Like,
oh, look at that. You send us very interesting to tell us about it. Yeah, it's a, well, it's definitely something that some people studied, but not many people. About language in general. There is a very interesting woman in California. Her name is Diane Deutsch. I don't know if you heard of her.
Yeah, she does audio illusions. Yeah.
Yes, and she studies the phonetic audio aspect of the language, and she definitely connects music and language. There is one of her talks, and I listened to that. I didn't prepare it for now, where she said that she studies exactly that, these kind of patterns, and she has a lot of recordings from all over the world of people saying the same phrase that she would tell them to say. And at some moment, when she was doing something, listening to those, she got up from her chair to fix something in the kitchen, and she was listening, and then at that moment, whether it was like a snag, one small phrase that she was in her voice saying, I remember what's the phrase, something, but somebody repeats it gently or something like that, and she was started to loop, just normal speech, but it started to loop. And she suddenly thought that they were singing. And if you listen to her doing that, she does that for the audience, you start seeing it as feeling it as singing. And the question is, like, is this a song? Is our language song? Like bird song or something like that, in that really qualitative physical sense. It's something different than other sounds in the nature from the other world, and we are specifically tuned to that.
There's well, two things, because there's like a whole genre of minimalist music that developed exactly from a composer having this experience of looping the same thing going over and over again. I can send everybody later today or tomorrow some links, but his name is Steve Reich, or Steve Reich, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. But in terms of Diana Deutsch, when I was an undergraduate, my undergraduate thesis, I used this audio illusion that she generated, that she used to develop an argument about how depending on the language we grow up speaking, that it tunes our ears essentially to certain frequencies or certain patterns, and that people that speak different languages will hear this illusion in fairly predictable ways. So it's she's actually at UCSD.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah. And she studies also Chinese and Mandarin and other languages, which are tonal languages.
Yeah.
Where the melody and where you actually pronounce it appears to be very significant and much more than Indo-European languages.
Mhm.
So one thing that she found out that, there is a significantly different percentage with people who have so-called absolute pitch among the people of our Indo-European variants and those that speak tonal languages. So do you know what's absolute pitch, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so how
Right.
many do you think people are have it in our, let's say, what you know in general, how much of the population?
Well, there's a difference, right, between absolute pitch and perfect pitch, like people being able to identify exactly what tone it is versus
Produce it.
and absolute would be. Yeah, so is that synonymous then?
I think it's this anonymous people who, like, when you see red or whatever, when you see a certain color, you can then pick from samples exactly the same color and match them perfectly. You don't even have to have names. It's much harder to do with smells and also sounds. And some people, most of us, if we hear a song, we can maybe repeat the song, but not in exactly on the same notes, maybe lower, higher, maybe, and some people who are not musical cannot even do that. And when we talk, we position our languages up and down differently, and it doesn't matter. I mean, you understand the same word, whether it's spoken by a man, woman, child, and it's completely different. And we don't have to have this absolute pitch, but in Chinese Mandarin languages, it's very important because the same word can significantly mean something different where it's positioned, and also the 4 different accents or ways to pronounce it, which incredibly exist in Serbian too, in rudimentary form, nothing like but in some particular words, it's very important to know whether the words is rising or falling, because the meaning is different. So among the people who speak Mandarin and other tonal languages, there are more than 70% people who have this perfect pitch or absolute pitch.
Right, I remember
As
that.
opposed to about 5% among the Indo-European. It was always thought that it's kind of like gift, that you were just like genetically wired for that. But it seems that the language plays a huge part in kind of picking that, which is incredible. And I think play with these sounds is so important for learning language. Kind of like playing with language, even with sounds, is important for being able to master all of that physically, just kind of like make it so that it becomes automatic completely, that when you speak, you don't have to kind of think about how to position your throat or your mouth. Yeah.
I'm experiencing that now, trying in my struggle to continue to learn Swedish, just how physical it is. That you really do just have to be practicing it and practicing it so that you don't have to be consciously forming the sounds. And so much of it for me too is connected to the sound of it rather than the meaning, like it's
Right. And we should also have this enjoyment in speaking this gibberish with other people, just to make our mouth work properly, like it's just like practicing jiu-jitsu or aikido or something to learn a certain skill with our language apparatus. You just really need to be very to feel play for kind of like in that sense that you repeat things because they're enjoyable. Probably you don't repeat them because you want to learn, but because you enjoy doing that. And it's funny, those two kids are kind of like, ha ha ha, they are enjoying themselves, and then they're seeing that the parents are enjoying too, you know, so it's all very terrific. In the background, it supports this development, which is interesting. Yeah. Which somebody may think like, you know, development of math through music, but people don't listen to music to develop math. They listen because they like to listen to it. Whatever else is the byproduct, it's very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah.
And Shelby had any reactions to the?
I have a lot, but Shelby, you can go first.
No, it's fine. I'm enjoying listening. Go ahead.
Yeah. So there is a Russian author who wrote about that also in some way. I don't know if you heard of Kornei Chukovsky. And
For sure.
Book from 2 to 5. If you don't have it, I found it in the electronic form, so I could send it to you. And it's not the only thing that he wrote about. He actually really collected on all possible levels of play with language, which we are going to talk about further also. But one of these is, where do I have it open here? Second, and it's a he starts though with these semantic ones, which are very funny. But yes,
Can we
yeah.
pause, Anna? Can I say my thought from the previous thing
Sure,
before
sure.
we go on to the next, just because I'll have so many thoughts and then I'll forget my other thoughts. So the one thing is, I thought I'm really interested that Robert's bringing in his undergraduate thesis, because I've been interested in that for so long and we haven't connected it to the play work in the way that I felt was like satisfactory or something, but I've had it sort of niggling at me because Keo also has an interest in this minimalist music. Side interest, but an intense interest, and so I'm interested in that connection. Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah.
But
was Robert?
It was interesting. No, but to connect Keo, because that's another interesting set of, maybe we can have a meeting one day about music and play. Because he likes this composer. I remember when I first met Keo that we had a shared interest in this American composer from the I guess 20s, 30s, 40s, called Harry Partch, and he was kind of this iconoclast who took Greek musical scales, like the original way of composing from Greek culture, which was very microtonal, and very also performative and dramatic, like combined, like playing music and singing music, but then with costume and dress and playing and very movement oriented. So I think that can be a nice connection here too with the minimalist work. Sorry, Beth, go ahead. So that's just sort of to think out loud about connections.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to push towards. Is like when I was in Japan for that Playworld work, I started to become interested in Kia's interest in theater, and he was taking Saul to these like traditional Japanese operas, and like the explicit thing of the grant, the explicit purpose of the grant was thinking about art, and then we started to talk a lot about ways of being. But I felt that there was some way that Robert's interest in sound and music, and this sort of space between sound and music, was somehow really important, and that there's so Robert also, I don't mean to like just be focusing on you in this public setting, but like you also have this interest in mindfulness, or I don't know what's your you're like very present. So something that Anna and I notice when we work with Robert is his presence. And like there's this since the pandemic, when I've been working with teachers, the use of music in the classroom is really important for reestablishing presence after like the trauma and the grieving. So I've been thinking a lot about music and presence, and but thinking about it with the teachers, but having in the back of my mind that I sort of think of Robert and Keo as these experts on music, because they're interested in this edge of music where it touches sound, or where it, you know, this question of sound and music. And that I also just have in my sort of constellation of thinking about people in my life, that I think of Robert as really present. And so, and it also came about, and I know I'm a little bit loose here, but it came about because I'm consciously trying not to make so many divisions between my life and my work. That's my new personal next chapter that I'm working on, trying to like apply this thing that I call research life. And so I spent a lot of the summer with this 4-month-old, Esther, and she was a big part of the Fulbright supported grant work this summer. And we weren't doing like making a new play world, but I was just thinking that I really want to do more play worlds with babies. And she was just like so amazing how present she was. She was just like, I know this about babies, but I have only had my own, you know, I've had a lot of children, but I've never had children I wasn't caring for. So like I've raised a lot of children, like both as a babysitter and a child, and as a parent and as an aunt, but it's just like you worry about them so much. But like this was my first sort of maybe more like a grandmother experience, because I experienced aunt as being sort of like a mom. And I was like, had this baby, and she was like this baby who I loved, and I like fell in love with her. It was very hard to leave her. We spent, you know, many weeks with her, many days a week. And she was at that age when she just at the end started to get some strange anxiety, but she didn't have it at the beginning. So we got to hold her all the time. And she was just like, how do they do that? How do they stay so present? And how is that connected to like rhythm? And how is it connected to time? And how is it connected to art? Those are really, really big ideas, but I wanted to bring them back a little bit. So the post that I put was just something my teachers have been sharing with me this week. And it's this, it's related to the connection between the trauma and the play and the music, but it's this, you know, cartoonist who got this MacArthur Genius Award, and she's being interviewed and talking. The thing that was most interesting to me is about hand movements. And so she thinks that we actually, you know how Gopnik says, if we don't play, like, you know, we're going to have a generational crisis, no one will be able to think. She doesn't quite say that, but like, you know, the idea that our brains are developing through our play. So this cartoonist thinks that because she has young children and graduate students playing together to help the graduate students with their work, because to help the children to like draw the graduate students' ideas and things to help the graduate students. But she has this idea that the college students now don't know how to like cut paper or use their hands because they're typing so much, and because they can't use their hands, they can't think. And so she's connecting like this movement to how it's connected to our brains. And that's the only reason I put that link in. But the main thing I want to say, and I'm sorry I'm talking so long, but I'm really hoping that some of the people here can help me to like connect some of these ideas in the future. So my wife is an artist, and she's starting her MFA program. It's like she somehow, anyhow, it's different in the art world. You can go to your MFA after you get some recognition, and that's sometimes a good way to do it. But she's really interested in, have you seen the Emily Dickinson, Robert, I really think like looking to you to make this connection, but like, do you know that, so Emily Dickinson wrote all her poems like on these scraps of paper.
Mhm.
And there's this collection of the Emily Dickinson poems that are like, they're like these beautifully written, like poems on these scraps of paper. She wrote them on these scraps of paper. They're like all over her house and tucked into her pockets and stuff when she was cooking, and on the back of recipes and stuff, and sometimes folded up in these beautiful ways. And they're like these like amazing, huge, powerful poems, like the most powerful poems about everything on these like scraps of paper. And that's somehow what it seems to me with the music. It's like when that minimalist music, when it's like just sounds, but like if you like have the sounds and then you put, hi Masha, and then you, it's like the sounds are the most powerful, or is it the music that's the most powerful? And then it's just like placed in these sounds. It has to do with miniature. And I'm going to make two more connections, and I'm just throwing it out there to see if people can help me. The other two connections are that I'm very interested in miniature, and Judah, my kid, is very interested in this new movie called Marcel the Shell. I don't know if you've seen it, but
Yeah, that's old.
so fun. No, the YouTube is old, and they semi-successfully made a full-length movie that
Made a movie out of it.
and it's really, I mean, for those of us who like the YouTube one, it's cool, but it's like Marcel the Shell is so cool, right? Because he's like this, he's like a full person just in a shell. It's like there's something about that juxtaposition of having like these tiny scraps of nothing and then these super powerful things in them. That I think, Masha, thank you for coming on right now. I think it has to do with time. So I wrote to Masha and Robert, like, did you read this certain book? I forgot what it was now. Do you remember? Did you get that email?
When did you send that email?
It's just like a day or two ago.
Send this link to this both Emily Dickinson and the
Marcel the Shell.
Yeah. And that's very interesting that you said that there is this
Emily Dickinson letters, I'll say in a minute. But the thing that it was this, I'll send you the link to this book that was connecting the time and the miniature, but they were somehow saying that it's changing time to put the big thing into the big thing inside the small thing, which. So this gets me to the final point that I was thinking, which is that when I watch those babies, the other thing I've been interested in, and I'm sorry, I'm like all over the place, but it's partly because I haven't had my coffee yet. It's a problem with these European meetings. If I get up too late, I haven't had my coffee. But the thing that I wanted to say is that I've been interested because they've had some new discoveries about facial blindness. And so they're trying to figure out like how people like myself who have facial blindness are actually not seeing what other people are seeing on faces. And so I've come to realize through some of that research that I'm often attending to like the wrong parts of the face. So I'm seeing like emotion, I'm not seeing meaning because I'm focused on like very small places around the eye. I'm seeing properly, but I don't have the connectivity between the areas of the brain. They're doing more research on it and finding some things. And so when I see those babies talking, I have a little bit of the same feeling that I feel when I see other people recognizing people on the street. Like I feel like really sort of jealous and left out, but like the babies talking to me, like I can't honestly quite see why they're not talking. Like why are we call it playing? Like I feel that other people are like overestimating or over experiencing meaning. For people who have worked with me a long time, I also have connected to the facial blindness, a kind of word where I lose words sometimes. So like, I think that like, when I see the babies, my question is like, why is that play and not just talking? I understand they don't have some meaning, but like, that's not so much what talking is, right?
Right. That's very, very interesting. I think that's a kind of like a place where a lot more research and thinking has to be put, because talking is also not doing, but it is doing. Playing is not communicating, but it is communicating.
Yeah.
There are all these gray areas in between. And one of the things that Sanda thought about the origins of language, she's not the only one. Huizinga did that, Brunner did that, Vygotsky in some ways did that, is that language as it is, or communication, symbolic communication with language, originates in play
From
or
play,
through
yeah.
play. And then we turn it into something which is not anymore playful. But without that playfulness, we cannot separate a piece of some kind of sound reality or whatever, gesture reality, to be something different than just part of like buzz that's around us. And when you were talking about mindfulness, it is a play that focuses us in a different way to something, to be there in a different way than it just like passing through, you know. So that I think this something that around that would be very, very valuable to continue. Like Brunner was talking about peekaboo, and in her article, she mentions that and talks about it as the quintessential place where language starts. And that peekaboo is the kind of like universal type of play, or plays like peekaboo, because, well, Sanda in her article talks about turn taking, like we learn about turn taking, and many people, Brunner also talked about it. I think about it in a different way. I think about it is exactly because you're creating an impossible situation that the child knows, like, where are you? Like, I'm right here. Like, you're suddenly creating something that isn't, in a very funny way. But on the other hand, for a little child, it's funny and maybe also true. So it's very understandable, like this dance without any words, but with gestures, like you're looking like, where is Beth? I can't find her. Oh, she's here. You know, like, so there is a lot of things that are very exaggerated, very surrealistic. And I think this idea of surrealism of language is very important, but nobody talked about that before. And since I'm looking at play a lot more from the dialogic point of view, I think that kind of dialogue, like these two babies and in a peekaboo, that aspect not of meaning, but addressivity, is incredibly important. But for the addressivity, play is something where the addressivity is very, very visible when it's a coordinated play, because you suddenly, that's my old theory, that you suddenly have to address the other people from two different points of view, at least, because are you telling them something serious or are you playing? And you have to disambiguate that right away to say, oh, it's play. You have to make all the, well, Bateson's, like what's in this frame is not the same what as out. My bite, the bite is not a real bite, but a symbol of a bite for dogs. Don't know, Shelby, how much you know Bateson. Okay, so Jeremy Bateson, who was the husband of Margaret Mead, has an article, and I may put a whole list of references about a play as creating frames in which perception, or not perception, but understanding of the symbols becomes different than in a regular life. So kind of like suddenly creates a new reality. So he was looking at the dogs playing. And do you have a dog? Who has a dog? Do you know how dogs signal to each other that it's now a play and I'm not gonna really bite you? When I bite you, it's not a real bite, but play bite. Do you know how they signal? And you can start watching it, it's really true. The dogs create, first of all, they have to catch the eyes of the other dog so that they know that they are, so it sees the mindfulness, like, look at me, like, and then they do a little bow, like they slap their feet on the ground and bow. And after that, if they come to you, you have to understand, or the other dog, if they're going to your throat or the ear or something, it's not going to be a real bite, but we are just playing that. And of course, that boundary can sometimes go back and forth, but Bateson was talking about the logic, that like logically, it's a jump from one kind of reality into a frame in which everything that in the rest of the reality means something now means like represent the meaning. It's not it, but represent the meaning, and it becomes the symbol of something else. So in Peekaboo, you have that because you create a situation where normal thing are framed with this high pitch, with this surreality, and you are addressing the other one not normally like you have to eat that or something, but like, what are you doing? And because it's such an unusual situation, and it's a big effort to figure out what's going on there.
So you have to be present.
You have to be present, and you have to start understanding that these sounds that you're hearing are not just like give me, do it, whatever you can figure out from a normal interaction between people who want you to do something serious, or you want them to do something for serious, or suddenly it becomes a sphere in which meanings have to be created independently of what you see. You have to start creating a space or this symbolic chronotope or something in which you now the meanings come from that interaction. Like, what is it? And Bruner, one of the problems with Bruner and Vygotsky and my mom were that they were not dialogic. They were just talking about how people understand that. But if you think of it as a dance, as you said, or as something that happens between two people, not inside anybody, but between two people, and only has the meaning within that situation, then you get to dialogism, and you can talk on that level.
Here, I'm reminded, and Beth, I don't know if you remember when we were grad students, Mike, we read, I forget her first, I think her first name is Ellen Besanayaki, I think is her name, and she's an anthropologist who I think she was making an argument that the origin of music is from mother-child like early child.
I always think yes, I always think of that. Yes. I didn't know it. I thought Mike said it. I didn't realize it was from.
No, Mike. It's yeah. I'll send you. Maybe I can send the article, and that like just that you can see basically all this call and response and rhythm is all there in the mother-child interactions, and that music and sort of rituals emerge from that seed. And I was just thinking about that too in this video example of the twins talking to each other. But I like that question. Why is it play to ask of that video? Why isn't it just talking?
I finally have something to say to you about Bakhtin. It's taken so I was reading Bakhtin when I was 18. I left school and I just read Bakhtin for a while I traveled in Europe because I thought that I just was so moved to start reading Bakhtin, and then I didn't use him at all, and then I've been watching Anna and become more involved, like really using his ideas over the course of the time that I've known Anna, like the past 20 years. But then just something you said about surrealism made me think that finally I could engage in a discussion about Bakhtin with you, which I haven't been able to do because I agree with everything you say, but then I still keep not writing with him. It doesn't somehow catch me. Like, it's not like I disagree with what you're saying, but I just can't but you said something about surrealism. So like surrealism's a political movement. I didn't appreciate that so much, but I was reading something about it like 2 summers ago, and it feels like a political action to me to like when you talk about meaning and you talk about starting and you talk about we, I'm really interested in this Learning Voices group that is come out of the Regenerating Chat. Spencer, that'll be a new issue in MCA, and I'm a editor on it, and so I've been reading a lot of the articles, but and sort of like this question of like what's political in our research, like what's the political stance, and there's and I'm sure you have an answer for this, Anna, and I want to hear it, and it doesn't have to be now, but like it just occurred to me that like there's something political in like you see the babies talking. And if you see the babies talking and you say this is play that's starting talking, or this is music, that's, I know that none of us here are like being disrespectful to the children. We're, you know, like we see them as full people in, you know, as much as we can in the world we live in. But like the Emily Dickinson poems, that this idea of is it why is what, okay, I know I'm being articulate, so I sound like a baby, but I'm not doing that in order to make my point. But like our kind of talking together today is like, I really sometimes can't see how it's different than what the babies are doing. And that's partly because I think I have a sort of, I mean, I'm not claiming for myself being a surrealist, but, and maybe it's partly like perimenopause or COVID brain, but like I walk around and or this research life kick I'm on where I'm trying to combine research and life, but like I really don't, I see play like all the time. Like in this time in my life, like the last 5 years, I just see play. Like I see play all the time. And I know that doesn't make sense if you want to study play, but it's like, it all seems like play. Like what we're doing now, I don't see how I think you're muted, Anna. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Now I can. Yeah, like I don't see the difference between when we look at these babies and we're like, okay, so they're playing at talking, or they're taking the musical part of talking. It's somehow like not how I'm seeing it. Like I just see them as talking. And I see us as talking, like what Mike says about throwing the ping pong balls at each other and most of them fall on the floor. They're mostly gonna fall, like how much do we catch each other's ping pong balls? If we're walking along and throwing the balls at each other, like, I totally also believe that I like to talk to adults, so I'm not gonna sit and just talk to the infants for my whole life. So I know there must be a difference. But I'm sort of feeling that there's like a political.
Okay, let me just ask you a question about in what sense are you using the word political? Where do you, for whom it's political? Are we studying what's political? I don't understand your question, or you're mentioning political. That's very interesting to me.
Yeah, I don't understand it either quite, but I have this I've been rereading that guy who talks about idiocultures this summer. I'm really sorry, I'm so bad with names. It has to do with my facial blindness.
Gary Allen Fine.
Yes. And so like when he's writing, you know, about the baseball team or something, right? So like, so that's from my other kid, Saul, who's really into local politics. And sometimes he doesn't know what's happening at a global. He'll only know like local Stockholm politics. He's very, you know, like interested in what just happened in Sweden and how that was related to the Stockholm campaigning. And then he's interested in like local New York politics. But like, if the local is political, right? Like if we're not being like,
But define what you mean by political.
Women's rights.
Yeah, what
But,
do you mean by political?
yeah. But then if you take it really small, and then you're like, so you take it really small to define political, then I think I can start to define political. So then political becomes something like close to something about, it's like the problem that the Bakhtinian idea that we have all these voices, and we're like, we have all these voices in us, right? Like we have all these voices, and this multi-voicedness of one person seems like very
As a
beautiful, but then it seems like, and correct, but then there's this part of like, even like when we're talking right now, as we all sort of like work together, each of us from our different positions of needs and powers and dynamics, to like negotiate this joint space. It's something about forming this whole together. Like when I see those babies talking, there was who, I don't know which of you just said it was like a dance. I think maybe Robert said it's like a dance. Like that's more what I see. Like, and then I feel like some of the ways that we talk about it, we're like taking it apart and still seeing it as like developing these skills towards language, or like developing these skills towards like that there's still meaning. Like there's no meaning separate from this dance. It's just like this beautiful dance. And it's like they're each
yeah.
creating something together. Okay. I think I have a little bit of coffee I should have before I...
No, it's very, very good. I would like us to watch it together again for the political among them, between them, because there's a lot of political things going on between these two babies while they're doing that. There is a lot of meanings without words, but do you want to do that?
Yeah.
Okay, let me just put it on, find where it is on my, okay, so I'm gonna go on, hold on, I'm gonna go on the beginning of this movie and then share it again. Okay. Share it with sound. Okay, watch for the political. Do you see it? I didn't start it yet. Do you see the movie? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to just stop it here, because the one came to the other and went like this, and the other was looking, says, "Ha." To me, it's funny because they're so small, but it's very, 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 and it's not an imitation. It's actually something going on between them, which is about some political. It's almost like one says, "Don't you know that I already told you 3 times something?" And the other says, "Oh yeah," like that. We cannot express them without words, but I don't know if you agree with me, but let me play more.
I have to, give me 1 second. I'll be right back.
Look at this, look, it's not only the dance, but they are really addressing each other about very important things in a very playful way, because suddenly it's dawning on them that they know what they are doing out of just this wonderful talk that they are doing. You can almost put the words. Actually, there is another version of this movie where somebody put fake words on that. Do you know that? Okay, let me show you what people did after it. Yes. Okay, hold on, just to find out where it is. Okay, this is the same movie. It's some kind of a subtitle. Because it almost calls to put some kind of, as you would call it, meaning, but that's a referential meaning. Here we just have pure addressing meaning with just some kind of emotional stance against the other emotional stance, and they are happily exchanging them, and it's meaningful talk, which is playful. Just talk. I don't know, but I see a lot of politics in there.
Well, so
you?
how are you defining politics then, Anna, in this?
Where do I find the politics?
No, how are you
Okay,
defining?
I
Yeah.
find,
How are you defining
okay,
it?
how I define, okay, I define the politics in a way how people relate to each other in terms of whose view prevails over whose view about
Mhm.
something.
Okay.
And so here we do have one, the one that's nearer to us is more offering and more persuading the other. The other one is kind of like, oh yeah, or ha ha ha, or what did you say? It's more receptive than the other. So we have two guys or two girls, I don't, I think it's two boys, that definitely kind of like position each other in ways that are kind of like trying each other as people in how they can persuade each other. It's very hard to find words for that, but I see pure politics here, like without any meaning behind that, but pure politics.
Just to clarify so that we're not, I mean, that's like a really interesting other direction, but I think it's not what I was saying, because I wasn't talking about the politics between us, I was talking about the politics between us and the video. So like I haven't shown this film in my class, partly because it's two white kids and I try not to show a lot of just always showing white kids in my class. So I have to, you know, like it's the where I wanted to put it would be the beginning of the class.
I will find, I have a wonderful video between a little baby and his father, where the father puts in words this kind of babbling, and there are two black people, wonderful, similar to this.
Send it to me, Anna. Send it to me. But then what I was saying about the idiocultures is that I was thinking of the political not in terms of like race or gender, but just the political in terms of me and the video. So it's like the video's there, right? Like the children are giving me this video of themselves. The children are agreeing to be filmed, and then they are there for me to see, and then I see it. And then do I see them as like I create a community with them, right? Like in viewing, we have a, like I'm the audience and they're the performers or whatever. You can talk about it different ways. And then of course there's the people filming that Anna pointed out, like the parents presumably. But then like, how do you see it, right? Like, do you see it that I can put my subtitles of meaning on? Or do you see it as like, I'm trying not to sound didactic because I don't feel like, or self-righteous, because I don't feel like that about it. But it seems like it's a political choice to just see everybody like that. like what if it's the reverse way? Like what if we all think that we're talking with meaning, but we're only just doing that our whole life?
Yeah, well, maybe that's true too. And maybe somebody who watches us from space actually sees us exactly like that. These people with a gesture, dance, have some sounds, or maybe looking at two birds doing that to each other and say, wow, they're having some kind of rituals or some kind of enjoyable dance or play. And that's what they like to do all day long.
Yeah.
My wife and I call it a spiral of consciousness, but we don't remember where we heard that first. I mean, it does have to do with something Virginia Woolf wrote, but I don't know. But like when you're sitting and I think we probably all experience this, like when you're sitting and then all of a sudden it all looks like from outer space to you, like your own family, or you can even do it while you're talking and you keep talking, but you see like you're just like right? Or just people on the street or people in your family and your
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying, like a political take to like call it play. I that's like, what are we saying is different? Like, what are we saying? Like, why is it so interesting to see them talk instead of a video of us talking right now?
I think
Yeah, go ahead, Anna, and then
no,
because
you,
I want to say,
you say.
because I just jump in, so sorry for interrupting like this, but it's so interesting how I could and at the same time couldn't follow this conversation, and I think this is very interesting.
Which one, the babies?
Sorry.
The babies or this conversation?
No. Your or ours dance, not babies. Babies were. Because what I feel is that, I mean, for me, what babies are doing, I mean, I also think it's political if we call it play or even if we call it conversation. But I was all the time, I'm thinking how, for me, this is like emerging conversation. So I really didn't like when adults put these words on this, because I think this is exactly against this idea of children's public, so to speak, that Sanda Marjanovic was using. I think what is happening here between children is some kind of ongoing conversation, like wondering together, how do we connect and communicate, and how do we invent together the way how we carry the conversation, rather than language or creation of meaning, in a sense that there are some, because someone said, and I know this was just an expression, like they know what they do. No, I think they are inventing what they do.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important that we somehow don't forget that it's not only language. For me, this is much more than language in a narrow sense of communicating meaning, even sounds. I think it's also bodily, because they respond to each other's moves, because one boy is raising a leg, and then another one is not raising in the same way, but raising. So I really think here what's going on is like emergent conversational creation. And I think that is political for me. Like creation of this relational space, which is not only in terms of language, but
I call it dialogic space, in the sense that dialogue always is that this dimension of offering the other and being acknowledged as that offer matters in some way. So that it has that that addressivity aspect. It's not just referential. We kind of think when we say meaning about the referential, like it refers to something that we know what it is about. But dialogue is not only about, but how we relate. It's not about something third or topic, but how we relate to each other and what do we do to each other at the same time.
But it's interesting because when I said conversation, for me it's like conversare, which means wandering together with. Yeah. So for me it's like wandering together around what this could be, inventing along the way. And for me this is like this openness. It can be open curriculum. I mean, of course this is not curriculum, but openness in a sense, in education, open curriculum, or creative force in philosophical terms, something that is like a ongoing creation, and this is a beauty for me in this, and also politics, in this space which becomes kind of a space for responding with each other and to each other.
Right.
And how is the babies different than what we're doing now? Like, why is it interesting to show it to our students? Just to show that babies do this too? Or to show that this is a form of play of conversation? Or to show that this is rudimentary conversation? Like, what is the point?
It depends on what for you this example is at that moment of time, because it has so many dimensions, and it depends on what you want to talk about that this can trigger. Like if you want to, I started our conversation with putting that out there because it's something that is so puzzling in itself on so many levels. But one level that we see is this sound level much better than what we see is going on among them, which we cannot really know without being their parents, knowing them, their history and the whole situation, because I'm absolutely sure that there is so much more we cannot see from this in the background, in terms of why they do it, how they do it, or who they resemble when they do, like what parents could be interpreted. And that's exactly the dialogue in my way of dialogic analysis, is to be aware that it's not a universal any, like I'm showing it because it's an example of a universal process like this and that. But about starting a conversation exactly like ours, to wonder, as Masha says, and you said that before, and Robert, to wonder about like what's going on. Is it play? Is it not play? What's political? What's not? Is it what we do the same as playing, or we shouldn't even call play? We didn't even talk why. What's play? Like in what way something is not a play or play? And something like that. So it depends. If you would show this, you would have a reason to show it in a sense of a provocation to talk about certain things that you, or to just start people thinking and offering their own associations in terms of that, and seeing where the dialogue goes on in your class without particular predefined goal to show it. I never showed it because I thought this is going to be illustration of this and that, but exactly like this, like let's see and see what we make out of that.
But I also think your questions, Beth, are so important in a way. What is why we are showing this, or why would we get to respond to this? Because it seems like, because for example, what I think at the moment is that sometimes not sometimes, maybe a conversation between these two babies sometimes is more profound than conversation between us. Or in a sense that they're maybe dancing more than we are from time to time now in the conversation, I mean.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too with the twins thing, is like for the like we know a lot of twins because I have these twins on my in one side of my family, and Rachel's town must have something environmental, but they produce like millions of twins, and so she has these very close friends who are twins. But like twins are very strange when they're younger. It is sort of weird if you like have them, like always sleeping together and always together physically. It's sort of an interesting way to grow up. Like it probably happens in some other settings, but like smushed up against this person who's at the same developmental stage as you all the time. I mean, I actually saw it as sort of like a twin video. Like it's just, I don't think it's, I definitely don't think it's more or less, but it's just like, it wasn't very interesting, as if they had been talking like we were taking a peek into a very long conversation. It's just wild to see a baby at that age who has been in conversation with another human being for so long already. Like that's just sort of wild.
Yeah, it would be very interesting actually to interview their parents. And since this is now for several years, these are young boys or maybe even teenagers by now.
Yeah, we should interview them right now. Someone should write to them, because I have this theory that if you interview the 7 and 8-year-olds about their early childhood, I really think you get really interesting answers. Like they seem to remember their infancy when they're 6 or 7 or 8, right at that transition to childhood, when their brains are having that shift on the MRIs, right? Like I think that should be another mode of studying infancy, is to always just ask 7 and 8-year-olds to study it. Because I wonder what they say that they're, I mean, most of the twins that I know do say that they can feel like if the other twin were to break their leg on the other side of the country, they know it before it happens. Like I'm not being mystical. I'm just saying like that the way that you can sense if someone you love very much dies, you know, like you can sometimes tell it sort of before. Like
Yeah.
there's some way that they're showing a way of talking
Right.
but I wonder if actually somehow that's a connection to play, Anna, like the presence that you were talking about with play, like that stopping, that sense of really being present in play. Like maybe that's what's sort of interesting about this video too.
Right, right. I think that the non-physical body of ours, non-physical body in the who we are as subjectivities is kind of coined in this kind of playful situation, in a sense that it's something that we are very focused on in a particular sense, like mindfulness as we talked about, and that somebody is responding to that in that way, so that there is this offer, like I read at the beginning that definition of language that Sanda said, and let me just Masha. Oh, okay. Let me just put for Masha that link to that the Google Doc that I created, and so I'll copy it from here because you have it. And there I kind of like in a free interpretation interpreted Sanda's definition of expressive language, or language for expression of your own thoughts, which yeah, to me that's very important for my dialogic orientation. So let me read it again. So creative dialogic offer to the others, expressing the child's experience of the world, helping the child to understand the implications of their own experience by addressing the others with a wish to make themselves understandable to them, not to themselves, but to them. So in that effort to kind of like express your own experience to the others and tell them what you experienced, you suddenly have an insight in what you experienced. You suddenly have a reflection as if you were the other. And that is in a way a sense of the dialogue, because you say something that suddenly becomes noticed as meaningful by somebody else. And so that means you have in a way touched the nerve somewhere. So in that sense, play creates these focus situations in which something is expressed in a different way. It just doesn't pass us. You have to pay attention or it doesn't exist. If nobody responds to your play, you cannot play with them. You can just be your own responder, which is different. And then you never know whether that's something important or not. And that's how I think that's where language is in the center of that. Because it kind of,
why is language in the center of that?
Because yeah, it's not what in this video, when we experience it, we are very puzzled because we don't know what they are referring to. We know they are touching something in us, but we are not part of their situation in the way they are, so we don't know what they are referring to, and we are so used to referring to something. But I think when you start from this other function, that your offer is answered in some way, you say something, somebody answers, that means there is a reason. What you said was not without reason. You are answered in some way. Then what you were saying becomes heightened and clearer for yourself, to kind of like you suddenly see a reflection that what you experience matters to you and to other, and can form a thought about it, if that's a right way to say that. You can form a relationship to that that's specifically different, and you can hold it in a way. And that's that non-material aspect of our human subjectivity and body.
Not material.
Not material, yes.
Why is it not material?
It's not as it's material in the sense that sound is also matter and energy, but it becomes something that's our human experience that does not have actually the essence. It's only in relations, because those relations.
Why are relations not material?
Well, they don't have substance in the sense of extensive material.
Are you sure about that?
Maybe not. I don't know. It's very interesting that you say that, but I think
Maybe material isn't the word.
Maybe it's not.
Because I think I have a sense of what it's not. I don't know how you say it now.
Bergson has the expression.
It's ephemeral.
Ephemeral, yes.
Maybe. But I mean, well, it's not freezable. I don't know how to say it.
It's not feasible because it's alive, but that doesn't mean it's not material.
Also, it does not. It's alive, and it changes you in certain ways. It changes that relation, how you see other things, and how you see yourself, and in a sense,
because it's a being. It's not a human being, but it's a being.
Yes, it's a being,
so it's alive, but it's material.
Yeah,
I mean, it has.
In a sense, let me say this different way. It's materiality in the sense of atoms and electrons existing there is immaterial for the meaning of it. It could be made out of anything else. It could be a different sound, like in a different language, or it could be in a movement. So what comprises it as a material is not important. It's important that a relation is almost, it could be taken into focus regardless. I mean, it couldn't.
I think that's what I mean by apolitical. I think what you just expressed is what I meant by apolitical. Like, I think that it's political because by political, I think I mean that it is connected. Like, give me an example of something that's not material or ephemeral the way you're like, just give me a really concrete example.
Okay, a concept of a principle, just the concept of the principle, or the concept of goodness. Is that concept in itself is a material?
Yes, because it was said to me by someone who I had certain feelings about in a certain place, and I can't.
It can be materialized, but it's not.
It didn't exist before it was explained to me, and it was explained to me in a certain place by a certain person.
But it's not a material. I guess I think we're having
the material, because then it becomes.
Okay,
that's my understanding of an artifact. It becomes an idea, but the idea can't be expressed except by some, like, it exists. Maybe I'm just talking about neurodiversity here, like it's just like ways of describing how we experience the world, but I don't experience concepts as.
Okay, so let me say it in a different way. I'll use a computer language. It's software rather than hardware. It's something that exists as a software that could be put on different computers in different computer languages, made out of different materials, but it's software as such because it has its certain internal integrity. It doesn't matter in what particular sign or on what particular wire it's put.
I don't feel that way about concepts.
That's very interesting. Yeah.
I think
very interesting. It's absolutely fascinating. So yeah.
I think Bergson is speaking about virtual and actual. And actual is the materialization of many possibilities which are virtual. That means that they exist as potentials, but which of them will be materialized depends on real conditions and material relations that are existing. So I think this is also this virtuality as always open potential, and then some of those potentials will be actualized in reality. And I think this is what we are talking about. And when
it's still if you understand the potential of the future as connected to the past, then it's still these concepts that were generated. For you to imagine the future, you have to take the components from the past and
exactly, but we cannot know which scenario or which line of the future of many possible will be realized in a way. So I think, of course, it is connected with the past because there is no future without the past, but there is no one future because from the same past, different potentials for the future might be open up. So for me, this virtuality or what is non-material is these many potentials that some will be materialized. Like with play, I think what is becoming in play, I think we cannot predict because there are many possibilities or potentials, but what is materialized is some concrete.
Right, and even if you say, if you go back to peekaboo that I was mentioning, if you say to the child, I don't see you, that's physically or like from the point of view of the material existence of that situation is a complete nonsense because obviously you can see them and you talk to them and you can hear them, but you pretend as if there is something which is not here, doesn't exist, or could not even exist as surreal. And you are playing with that. And so in that sense, there is a difference between the materiality of the situation and complete virtuality of of something that's pretend. It just does not exist, but you can play at it.
What if like that? What if we see that? What if we were to watch those babies and be like they're really talking to, like if you saw those babies and you're like, that guy, he like the sort of tough guy, he like really wants to say something, and then like the other guy who has his front to us, not his back to us, is like he shows this like radical empathy, like Martin Buber, like he doesn't understand, like it's almost like a Kierkegaardian moment, like where he like doesn't understand what the other guy's saying, but then he like comes to such like sense of their joint humanity that he gives over to his brother like this understanding with this like laugh, that's what his first laugh shows, not an imitation of an adult laugh, but actually a true understanding of his humanity. Then we're all like working towards that, like we're all trying to be like those babies, like that's not in a romanticized way, but in a like
we do exactly the same. And we actually, I do think, and that's Bakhtinian, that we imagine that we understand what other people say, while we actually don't always and probably never completely know.
Right, but that act of imagining what people say, like how can we call that not material? Like in that sense, aren't we? I mean, do we not share that common
I think that
the artifacts are material?
Yeah. But I think that you use the word political and material in the sense that is different than I use it. I cannot say for the other people, and it's different in a sense.
That's what I hear here.
Yeah, it's different in a sense is that it matters in a sense, not material. It matters because it changes for ourselves what we think, how we position ourselves. It plays a role in our relationships in a certain way. So it exists in that sense that it matters, but it's not a material. I think that's a big. That's how I see that when you say it, how can you say that it's not material when it does something? Yes, that's true.
No, not when it does something. When it like, I think that I have like a I don't think I'm using it incorrectly, but I might be using like the wrong words to
I don't think correctly. It's different. Yes.
No, but anyhow, let's return to this another time. But I actually think that I postponed my other meeting for an hour, but I know that we're
Okay,
wrapping
well,
up soon. So, but
Yeah.
are these meetings usually 2 hours?
Usually 2 hours, and we
Oh,
can
okay,
have
So,
about 10,
so in the
12
future, I'll
minutes.
schedule them for
You
2
can,
hours.
of course, stay longer, or whoever wants to stay longer, that's fine with me
I
too.
think this is like a critique, like that. I think that like Mike would always say that, sorry to bring up Mike all the time, but I've been talking to him and thinking about his just being at LCHC, but he would always say, oh, Bakhtin I can't relate to because he's mystical. Like,
Mhm.
I feel like there's something about this issue of the material, like there's something about material and concepts. When Masha was bringing in the time, I felt like we were sort of talking at cross purposes a little bit. But I think that even though I'm using the wrong words, like political and material is not the right words, I'm still trying to say something that is a disagreement with you, Anna, about this, that has to do with something about what you just said about the material versus what's material and what's not, or what Robert's using the word ephemeral. So I think all I'm saying is I think that we did come upon some disagreement here through this conversation.
Because I'm
That's
very
really
puzzled.
useful, even if I'm not articulating it. So I don't want to just dismiss it like I'm using the terms differently. If I'm using the terms differently, that's fine. But at the root, I think there's some disagreement that I'm starting to sense in a way that maybe sometime I could articulate it. So I just want to, I can table it, and I don't mean to take the whole time with my interest, but that's really interesting to me. So I'd like to,
No,
I
I think
want to put it here and think about it. I don't want to rush in 10 minutes.
to me, I think we stumble now upon the center of what I thought I said when I said there is something that's very not completely researched about the connection between language and reality, or language and play and reality. We constantly, all of us, not only you and me and Robert and Masha and Shelby, but all the researchers, assume certain things, and we didn't explore them further. And like, for instance, when you look at these two babies, what's going on there, how can we understand it, in what way this is a dialogue, and how is it different from play, and why would we even call it play or language or whatever? So it's very interesting. I think that it's very productive, incredibly interesting talk that we so far engaging in.
And I would bring it, because it's about reality, I would take it back to methodology. So it really reminds me, like Robert and I have worked together for several decades now, and like we have this refrain where he says, like, but you can't just say that. And then like I say, but I see it. Like I really see it. And he's like, well, just say how you see it. And sometimes that's absolutely right. We can say how one of us sees it, and then we come out with a paper that can be published in a respectable journal, and people can understand what the hell we're saying. And that's called communication. And sometimes then I feel that, like, so most of the time that's called communication, and that's probably why I've published anything, is because Robert keeps asking me that question. But then sometimes I feel like I really can see it. I really can see, and it happens with another friend of mine who I write with too, who's a philosopher, who keeps saying, like, I think you misunderstand. His name is Chris Shuck, and he says, I think you misunderstand, like, you treat metaphors as if they're the real thing. But sometimes the metaphors don't seem like a metaphor. They seem like a description of what's actually happening. And that's what I saw with those babies, is like, it's almost like they were manifesting in this very material way something that I think of as not material and ephemeral, like love or care or empathy or or momentum or time. Like it's like you can see it when you see them with each other because of how much they love each other. And that's sort of what I mean by political and material, is like it seems political to acknowledge that we can actually see it.
Okay, yes, you do use the words in a different way. I would say that we have a right to put that frame on that, and you call it political. I would say we have a right to see it from this point of view, and also probably different points of view too. In that sense, which one of point of view we use to look at that video is kind of, you may call it political, in my view, to stretch that word political. But I think that we all have a right to interpret this movie in different ways, and to see in it different phenomena going on. Agree, disagree, what's going on there is, in a way, our research politics among ourselves. In that sense, I could understand that, yeah.
I just have an urge to comment. I agree with you, Anna, on this, but I just want to comment on what you just said, Beth.
Mm-hmm.
I feel it so deeply. So when you just what you said, I absolutely. So it's like now for me more than doing research or something. But what you just said, I completely share this to the point that I can even cry. That it makes really something moves in me.
Mm-hmm.
So I really, what you just said, like I'm there with you.
Mm-hmm.
Painful. I mean, happy.
Thank you for saying that, the feedback. And then that's what I call research life. So like when you say it's more than the research for me, that's what I think is ethical research now. Like it just like, I don't know how you get there, but just like with teaching, you know, people who will be preschool teachers, I think we have to keep like pushing ourselves to like, obviously sometimes you should just be doing research. Like when you're researching a vaccine, maybe you should just be doing research. I'm not even sure that's obvious, but maybe that's wrong too. But I think it's an ethical stance to like push yourself to the place where you say it's not just research.
I think it's because we are really entering in relationship with the soul of these people in the video. We are not looking and don't want to look at them as objects who are behaving in a certain way, but people who have their own soul and they heart, and in that sense it is ethical and political. Yeah, in that sense I understand that. Yeah.
I actually think, Anna, that I disagree with, or I don't find some of the Bakhtin useful, but I find your interpretation of the Bakhtin useful, but I don't find it in the Bakhtin itself. So I actually sometimes
depends what you read. It's not all over, you know. He also changed over the years of his life. Many times he did different turns. So it's my Bakhtin, not maybe your Bakhtin.
No, but sometimes it's like, I mean, yeah. Okay, but so I would like to talk about what soul is, but not in 3 minutes. So
not in 3 minutes. So that's true. That's true.
Yeah, I have to sign off soon because I got to steam some artichokes.
We'll continue that, but then on a more practical note about maybe Masha and I will stay if Masha has more time, about translations. So yes, I'm translating this, not translating, I'm fixing the translation of this article about children's linguistic or language games that was already translated in a first round by Ružica Sandic, and then Beth and I went over that in the first pass several years ago, and I found it now to work on that too. So, but Masha and I have worked on the critique of the institutionalization of children's preschool education, and I think we finished that. I don't know if Masha, you're now okay with the last version. If yes, I'll send it to everyone. You're muted. Mm-hmm.
can I ask before, Masha, before you answer that, or you answer that, it's okay, I'll be 5 minutes late to my other thing. Go ahead. I just want to ask a practical question after. Go ahead.
Please do that, and then we will come back to the
Well,
answer.
two practical things. One is Masha, I was again reminding Anna that I found out this organization gave money for the translation before, had more money. So make sure you cite that organization with that sentence I gave you on both papers, right? Because they paid for translation for both papers, but you can say partially for the second one. And then the other thing was, if anyone has any opinions, can they write me? Because I'm really having trouble deciding about coming to this conference. I'm like higher risk from this POTS. And if I get the COVID again, I have to take this Paxlovid, and I can't get the Paxlovid to bring with me, but I could do this thing where I go, and if I get it on the plane, I fly back. It's like so important for me to be with you, but I'm wondering if I can do it by Zoom and be safer. And I really don't know the decision. So if you have a thought on that, you can just send me an email. Like, I'm trying to judge how important it is for me to be there in person and how much of the risk it's worth, because I'm at a different risk level now than I was. So if you have a thought on that, just shoot me an email, because I know it's just going to be like this for the rest of our time with COVID. But I'm going to go to this other student now. Okay. And
Beth,
Shelby,
I sent you a message.
I just copied it, so I'll respond.
Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry. Thank you so much for this wonderful conversation and morning, Anna and everybody.
Thanks, everybody. But let's stay in touch also over email about the conference. And then maybe also we can use sometime in the next play meeting to have a discussion about the conference.
So yeah, it would be the first Wednesday of October.
Okay. And yeah, if you had any comments, Anna, about because I sent out that Google Doc that had the preliminary plan for the conference. If there's anything there that you want to, any comments, let me know. Otherwise, I'll probably start to make a more final program, and I'll send that out. But there's still, we just have a month and a half, so we still have possibility to make changes.
Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Thanks for the conversation today.
Thank you.
Very nice conversation. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Ana, lepo izgledate u Beogradu, nešto ste zacarili. Moram da vam kažem. Neozbiljno, to mi je prvo onako nekako sijate, ne znam da li je to onaj...
Ne, znaš šta, sedimo ovde u Svetogorskoj, sunce zalazi ovde, znaš.
Tako je, pa znala sam da ste u nekom kako da kažem, posh environmentu. Samo da vam kažem, pre nego što, ja sam ovde na univerzitetu i sad ako propustim voz, a mi smo dalje od grada, neću uspjeti, tako da moram mnogo brzo da idem, ali sam tu, mislim, čujemo se i dolazim u Beograd, rekla sam vam kada. Ja putujem zapravo, ja sam u petak u Beogradu.
Ove nedelje, pa fantastično.
Da, pa onda, tako da samo znate, moram sad da uhvatim taj voz.
Ajde.
Ali vas mislim, čujemo se i oko prevoda i oko svega, imam samo nešto sitno i imam tu rečenicu na kojoj Bet insistira, tako da nemojte da pošaljemo dok to je toliko stalo, verujem da je ona u nekom pritisku.
Da, imam i taj drugi prevod, sve sam ja to sad sabrala ovde.
I onda da možemo da, onda ću se i ja, kažem, i uključiti i sve, nego samo sad da ne ispustim, ako ispustim taj voz, neće se vratiti.
Svakako, idi ti, a ja nastavljam ovde ovo da radim.
I kažemo, mogu, onda se uključujem, pa možemo opet kao, čini mi se da je dobro kad sedimo i diskutujemo tu finalnu verziju teksta.
Da, jako je dobro.
Onda uspevamo da... Ovo ste snimili sve, hoću da odslušam prvi deo, pogotovo vaš uvod i to, a sad odoh jer je za 10 minuta taj posljednji voz.
Ajde onda, čao.
Ajde, grlim vas, Ana, i vidimo se sledeće nedelje.
Ajde, čao.
Ćao.